What do the Beatles, a coal miner from Scotland, a Freemason landlord, and a football stand named after a South African war have in common? They're all part of the origin story of one of the greatest football clubs in history, Liverpool FC. From bitter splits and Scottish pioneers to working class rebellions and global domination, from tragedy at Heysel and Hillsborough to nights of glory in Istanbul and Madrid, Liverpool's story isn't just about trophies, it's about survival, loyalty, and belief. In this episode of History Football Club, we walk through the Anfield gates and dive into the mythology of the Reds: Shankly, Paisley, Dalglish, Klopp. It is more than football, it's a culture, a people, a movement. My name is Cristian Butalias, and this is History Football Club, where football isn't just a game, it's history in motion. The beginnings of Liverpool came from an argument. Believe it or not, this came from a fight. So this happened when John Holding, a Freemason businessman and owner of a brewery, had an argument with the Everton committee about lands, where we actually have the stadium of Liverpool today, which is Anfield, and the rent prices for the use of these lands. So for example, let me put it kind of into perspective to you. The team that played at Anfield was named Everton, and this team rented the fields from John Holding, who actually happened to be one of the chair members of the committee, and he would rent out the place to Everton so they can practice, so they could hold their matches and everything like that. So Everton played in land owned by Holding, but didn't exactly like the deal they had with him, so they decided to move on to Goodison Park, which is their home today. And actually, just to add a little extra piece, they are building a new stadium closer to the river. So that's going to be a story for another time. So he did the next obvious thing, this being Mr. Holding, which, since now his land wouldn't have a team to be playing there for him, basically, he would decide to start another club. What did he do? He'd gather a few men, and he called the new team Everton Athletic. This was the original name, but the Football Federation, the Football Association at the time, didn't want any trouble with the name, to be confused or, to be any confusions around town or even, amongst each other. They didn't want any problems, basically. So they asked Mr. Holding to change it. And this is when he named it Liverpool FC. So in March of 1892, Liverpool FC was born. Along with Liverpool, the Merseyside Derby will be born, which happens to be the longest running top flight derby in England. So Merseyside, just in case you guys don't know what it is what they call the matches between Liverpool FC and Everton FC. These will be commonly known as Merseyside Derby. Mersey is actually the river that runs through Liverpool. Since the games are played close to, Mersey, the river, they call it Merseyside. So let's talk about the colors and the badge of Liverpool for just a second. The first 4 years of Liverpool, they wore a half white, half blue shirt. In 1986, they moved to their all red shirt, adopting the city colors. The Liverbird, as you see in the logo today, came in 1901, but it wasn't incorporated to the actual kit that they wear today until 1955. Fun fact, Liverpool was the first English pro club to have a sponsorship logo on their shirts back in 1979 when they agreed a deal with Hitachi, a Japanese brand. Liverpool won the Lancashire League in their debut season. At the start of the 1894-1895 season, they were admitted to the Football League. They actually started playing in the Football League 2nd Division, and then in 1986, they got promoted to 1st Division. Tom Watson took over in 1896 for the first time in the 1st Division campaign, and Liverpool won their first league title in 1901 and then again in 1906. But before we could continue into the Red story, let's dive deep into why Liverpool was able to be successful this early on. Scottish professors So you're probably thinking, what does this phrase mean? So back in 1882, there was a match between England and Scotland. And this caught the eye of the English because they noticed that the Scottish, they were playing more of a combination football instead of the English dribbling style. And they were also kind of playing in a team. I mean, you would think, right? Soccer is a team sport. But back in the day, the English will play more of an individual game per se. So they would give the ball to one of the players, and then everybody else on the team will kind of rally around him, form some type of a shield, and let that person kind of dribble his way through the whole field. But when the Scottish people came, they started passing the ball around and, hey, I give it to you. I'll go to the open space, you give it to me, and stuff like that. So this was kind of like a huge turn of the page when it came to, professionalizing soccer and making it more of a real thing. This is when a lot of people would go from Scotland to England whenever it became professional and kind of modernize the game of soccer. So England needed a lot of these people, what they call Scottish professors, to kind of come and play for England and kind of switch the style and kind of make soccer what we know as today, more of a team game, more of a passing game, more of a combination game, as we would call it. And a lot of people from Scotland actually were mad at the players. The football league in Scotland would blacklist players that would go down to England. They would call them mercenaries and traitors. And just because they couldn't keep up with the fact that, a lot of these really good Scottish players will go down in England, because in England they would go and get paid, for their services. Then the Scottish decided to professionalize soccer in 1893. So they were a little behind in the game when it came to making soccer a professional thing. But there were also a huge component into making soccer to what it is today. So it kind of, give and go to both sides. The English kind of invented the game, but the Scottish kind of, in a way, perfected it in a way. So it's very interesting. And also, as the British Empire expanded, they also exported the Scottish way of play throughout the world, especially in Uruguay, Brazil, Argentina. So you see a lot of that influence. Actually, if you look back into the early turn of the century, and these three countries in particular, you're going to see a lot of Scottish influence, English influence, and a lot of soccer being played in the same way that the Scottish professors were playing the game. So it's very interesting. If you're a fan of history, look up Scottish professors. I think it's something that it's really cool, not only for the world of soccer, but also especially when it came to soccer in England when it was coming to get professionalized. So let's get back to Liverpool here. Building a team. So the first team that would get built after Holding created the team of Liverpool will be named the Team of Max. The manager, John McKenna, he traveled to Scotland to scout players. And it happens that a lot of those players had Mac in their surname. So you have players like Duncan McLean, James McBride, Malcolm McVean, Hugh McQueen, Matt McQueen, Jock McCartney, Bill McOwen, Joe McHugh. A lot of these people came from Scotland, played in England, played specifically in Liverpool. And as the name says, the Team of Max was born. John McKenna brought a bunch of these guys from Scotland because he knew the potential that they had. He brought them to Liverpool. And this is when Liverpool kind of starts winning and winning and winning in the beginning of the turn of the century. They get to their first FA Cup final in 1914, but they actually lose that one to Burnley 2-1-0. But then in 1922 and in 1923, they win the league titles. But they wouldn't win another trophy until 1946, 1947 with George Kay as manager. Also in 1905, another FA Cup final, but this time they would lose against Arsenal as well. So a couple of, not good results. To add on to the fact that they were not able to win a lot of trophies between the 20s and to the 40s, then in the 1953-1954 season, they were relegated. They were sent to the second division. It's kind of like a bad time for Liverpool. And then to make matters worse, in 1958-1959, in the FA Cup, they lost to a non-league Worcester City. Imagine not only you are, relegated to second division, you are kind of, suffering all these defeats, being humiliated by other teams and losing and not winning trophies. But then you go play a team that is technically non-professional, non-associated, non-league, and then you play this FA Cup. So for those that don't know, the FA Cup is a competition in England where basically every team, non-professionals and professionals, at one point kind of have to meet each other. So it kind of goes in steps, right? If you're one of the lower teams, you have to kind of build your way up and then play against the better teams as you go forward. And this non-league team, Worcester City, beat Liverpool FC in the 1958-1959 FA Cup. So very extraordinary for them. Even though this was probably the darkest time in Liverpool history when it comes to that downfall of not winning anything, this would also be a new beginning because William Bill Shankly will be appointed manager, and this will be a turnaround for Liverpool in their history. The Shankly Revolution will come in. William Bill Shankly. Let's talk a little bit about this Liverpool legend. So he was born in a coal mining village of Glenbook, Scotland on September 2nd of 1913. He was the ninth of 10 kids where all 5 boys of the family played professional soccer. Or professional football, I guess we should say, right, at this point. Shankly, funny enough, he claimed that, quote, the Shankly brothers could have been any 5 brothers in the world when they were all at their peaks, unquote. He went to school until the age of 14, then he started working in the mines. He would go to Glasgow to watch Celtics or Rangers, and that's where he would get his love for football and his experience of watching all these, great teams like Celtic and Rangers, and just be able to get, immersed in all this beautiful football, and where he would get all his ideas and energy and just the love and passion of soccer. Unfortunately for Shankly, at 26 years old, World War II would take place, and it would also take place during his prime soccer years, in which he would join the Royal Air Force. He also did manage to play in wartime leagues. For example, there were some teams that would gather and kind of play some tournaments here and there. So Shankly played for Arsenal, Norwich City, London Town, and a few others. And on May 30 of 1942, he played a single game for Liverpool in a 4-1 Merseyside derby against Everton at Anfield, and that's where he fell in love with Liverpool FC. After the war, he tried to come back and play for Preston, but now at 33, he had lost a spot in the team, so he decided to coach instead. He coached in Carlisle United, where he uses psychology to motivate players. Grimsby Town, he also coached in Workington, Huddersfield Town, and then finally he arrived at Liverpool in 1959 to coach. One of his lasting innovations is that "This is Anfield" plaque secured to the wall above the players' tunnel. Coupled with the roar of the crowd, it was designated to intimidate. Shankly stated that the plaque is, quote, to remind our lads who are they playing for and to remind the opposition who are they playing against. So just to put it into context, when you are in the tunnel of Anfield, Anfield is the stadium where Liverpool plays. There's a plaque right as you go into the field that says, "This is Anfield." And as he mentioned, this is supposed to remind the players, you are not playing for just any other team. You're playing for Liverpool. You're playing for one of the greats. You're playing for the passion, for the people, for everybody that comes to watch you. And not also that, but, using the psychology against the opposing teams, to let them know they're not coming to any, raggedy old stadium in the middle of nowhere, England. They're going to Liverpool. They're going to Anfield. They're going to a place where legends are made. And until today, 2025, this sign, you can still see it on top of the tunnel as the player goes out. So let's go back to Liverpool. The team was at its peak worst, playing their 5th year in the 2nd division and had lost to the non-league team in the FA Cup. And this is the Liverpool Big Shankly took over. And he had plans for the club. This is what he said. "My idea was to build Liverpool into a bastion of invincibility. Had Napoleon had the idea, he would have conquered the bloody world. My idea was to build Liverpool up and up until everyone will have to submit and give in." This man was literally legendary. He's like a poet. He let go of 24 players that first year, and he created this place that he called the boot room. So the boot room was a place where they stored all the shoes, or the boots, the soccer player shoes, and just stuff like that they would use around the training grounds and just for the games and stuff like that. So when you think of the boot room, think about the Rat Pack, think about Peaky Blinders, think about Goodfellas, think about your bros, think about your group of friends that you decide to get together and have a space, a room where you guys gather and you just feel at home. This is what the boot room was for them. It was a place where he could gather with his quote unquote boys, and they could discuss tactics, they could discuss how the team was playing, they could discuss players individually, and they could just discuss things that pertain to Anfield, pertain to Liverpool, pertain to the club and the team. This boot room was, quote unquote, active from the 60s to the 90s. And these were the people that gathered there: Bill Shankly, Bob Paisley, Ruben Bennett, Tom Saunders, Joe Fagan, who, funny enough, he would be the one to store the Guinness in the room, the beer. And then Rooney Moran was the captain of the team. So he was also invited into this room to talk tactics and talk about the team and how they could make this team even better. Among them, they would win 43 titles. So imagine the craziness of what the boot room was, that not only it created, crazy minds and crazy soccer minds in the way, but it also created winners. It created people that would come out of there and give it their all. And also it kind of shows the need to have, people to bounce ideas from. So this is why I wanted to show this part of Liverpool history, because if it wasn't for this room, if it wasn't for the people in the room, I don't think Liverpool would be Liverpool as it is today. Some of the people that were produced, quote unquote, out of this room that came after, there were, I guess we can call them kind of disciples of these guys, were Roy Evans, who would also win a title with Liverpool, and then Kenny Dalglish, who would also win 10 titles with Liverpool as a coach. In his diary, Joan Fagan would say about the boot room, quote, In time, it would become furnished with luxuries like a rickety old table and a couple of plastic chairs, a tatty piece of carpet on the floor, and a calendar on the wall that would later be adorned with photographs ripped from newspapers of topless models. There was little evidence to suggest this room was even part of a football club, unquote. So, as I said, imagine you and your bros, sharing ideas, how to take over the world, how to, invent the next greatest discovery. I don't know. Just think about who you are as a person and what you, love to do. Maybe it is soccer, right? Maybe it is a different sport. Maybe it is just an idea. And you share this love and passion with other people. And the boot room basically showed how having those people in a room and just kind of sharing ideas and shooting the shit, as we would say, kind of can bring greatness, especially to guys, right? We need that brotherhood, that partnership, and just having those guys around was great. In 1993, unfortunately, this boot room will be demolished to make room for a press room. So sad to see that go, but I think that brought a lot of stuff for the future of soccer, as we see a lot of managers and head coaches kind of create this sort of style of communication between them and their assistant coaches about how to move on with soccer in a club. So let's go back to Liverpool. So they were promoted back to First Division in 1962, and it was time to dream again. They were back. They were back in the big leagues. Liverpool have made it back. Shankly had dreamt of this, and I think they were working to get to it. Tony Evans of The Independent wrote, quote, Shankly created the idea of Liverpool, transforming the football club by emphasizing the importance of the cop and making supporters feel like participants, unquote. And this is where the idea of the cop comes in. I mentioned in the beginning, why does a war in South Africa have anything to do with Liverpool and their supporters? And the Kop was actually a battle that was fought in South Africa. It was the Battle of Spion Kop in South Africa when English forces lost to the Boers in the 1900s, losing about 1,500 men, amongst them over 300 men of Lancashire Regiment, many of them from Liverpool. So Kop was a mountain that kind of resembled a stand, a football stand in a way. It was so steep. It was so weirdly shaped. It kind of reminded people of Anfield. It reminded people of being in a football stand. And after this terrible battle with a lot of people, a lot of English soldiers lost their life. A lot of them being from the Liverpool area and, possibly supporters of Liverpool themselves. It was kind of a nice, endearing reminder of, of these people that kind of gave their lives in the battle. So they decided to name the stand after the mountain where all these Liverpool men left their lives. It's kind of a simile in a way of having, men going to battle in a way, right? And they are the supporters. They are the ones that are going to back them up going into this battle. Anfield will become a battleground where the Liverpool players will take on whoever is the opposing team, and they're going to be the Kop. They're going to be the place where they're going to defend as the people from South Africa defended the mountain. They're going to defend it against the opposing team. So it's a cool parallel, but also a cool reminder of the people that lost their lives, that fought maybe a stupid war or whatever it may have been at the time. But it was a reminder of the people that lost their lives. A lot of these people that went to the Liverpool games, it was their family members, brothers, fathers, uncles, cousins. And it's just cool that they have the memory alive of who they are. And then we get into 1964. It was the last game of the season, and they actually beat Arsenal 5-0, and this was after 17 years of being in a drought of no trophies. Liverpool will lift the title one more time, and this is a little clip of that day. We go back in 1965, they won their first FA Cup. So everything was going great. In 1966, they would win the league again and reach European Cup Winners' Cup final against Borussia Dortmund, but they would lose that match played in Hampden Park in Glasgow on 2-1 after extra time. And the cool thing about, these older 1966 matches or matches in the 60s and 70s is that there are highlights on YouTube. So if you guys would love to watch these highlights, you can kind of go watch them there. Obviously, it's not a victory for Liverpool, but I think it's cool that we can get to see all these matches like if they just happened not that long ago. So going into the 72-73 season, Liverpool would win the league again, and this time they would lift the UEFA Cup, or what we know today as the Europa League title. They would beat Borussia Mönchengladbach. That's a tough one, winning on a 3-2 on aggregate, which would be their first European title. It would be the first English team to have won both of those trophies in the same season. And then again, they will win the league the following year. Shankly would retire with 9 trophies with Liverpool, and his assistant, a member of the boot room, would take his place, Bob Paisley. Just in his second year as a manager, Bob Paisley in 1976, he would win the league and the UEFA Cup by defeating Club Brugge 4-3 in aggregate. The following year, they would win the league again, lose the FA Cup final to Manchester United, but will go on to win the European Cup or Champions League for the first time against Borussia Mönchengladbach in a 3-1 matchup in the Stadio Olimpico of Rome. And then the next year, they will go back-to-back, beating Club Brugge 1-0, and this time in English soil at Wembley Stadium. 2 championships, 2 European Cups, 2 Champions League back-to-back for Liverpool. Honestly, the peak of soccer life at one point in time. I mean, just winning 1 Champions League alone is a great deal, but imagine going back-to-back and this time doing it in English soil at Wembley Stadium. They say Wembley Stadium is probably one of the greatest stadiums of soccer in the world. Wembley Stadium, for those that you guys don't know, it's a stadium that was built just specifically in England to play finals or for the national team to play. So it's like a national team stadium that only the national team uses, or whenever there's a decisive game or a very important game that has to be played in England, then they would transfer it to Wembley Stadium in London. Kenny Dalglish will score the lone goal. Dalglish will be a product of the boot room, as we mentioned, and then later on he would win 10 titles as a coach. And then again, they would win the first division title in 1979. So Liverpool was winning left and right. They would go not a lot of years in between without winning any championships. In 9 seasons, Paisley won 20 titles, including 3 European Cups, 1 UEFA Cup, 3 league titles, 3 consecutive League Cups. The only thing that he did not win was an FA Cup. Paisley will retire in 1983, and he was replaced by his assistant and also boot root member Joe Fagan. Fagan, in his first season, he would win the league, he would win the League Cup and a European Cup. They were the first English team to win 3 trophies in 1 season. But unfortunately, all of this success will be followed by dark times, and this is what we're going to talk about next. The year was 1985. Liverpool got to the European Cup final. They were defending champs. They had beaten Roma on penalties in 1984, and they would have to travel to Brussels, Belgium to face yet another Italian side, Juventus. The Italians were coming from an unbeaten run in 1883 and 1884. Juve had many players that helped Italy win the 1982 World Cup, with one of them being the 1984 Football of the Year for 2 years in a row, the Frenchman Michel Platini. Not only were both teams on top of their game, respectively number 1 and number 2 teams in the UEFA club ranking, but both teams had faced each other 4 months earlier in the 1984 European Super Cup, where Juventus had won 2-0. So this match, this final, was basically a rematch. Heading into the actual games, both teams had expressed their concerns about Heysel Stadium, which the game will be played at, but UEFA, the governing body of the match, refused to consider a move even with better stadiums that were available for such a game between 2 teams that had such amazing followings. There was nothing they could do there. The game will be played at Heysel Stadium. Liverpool on one side, Juventus on the other, and then UEFA designated a neutral zone. This neutral zone, unfortunately, was placed right next to the Liverpool fans. And this neutral zone, unfortunately, also will hold a lot of Juventus fans. And this is what happened next. Liverpool fans, I guess if we can call them fans, this was a act of hooliganism in a way. So at this time in the mid 80s, late 70s, going into the 80s, there was a lot of issues going on with hooliganism. It's going to be a topic that we're going to also touch on in another episode, but a lot of political stuff, a lot of rebellion, a lot of youth and stuff like that, and unfortunately it was masked with violence. Everything that had to do with hooliganism was basically hand to hand with violence, and that's basically what happened here. So this neutral zone was next to the quote-unquote Liverpool fans, and they began to attack this neutral zone. The Liverpool hooligans began to just go at it, try to break fences down, try to break everything down to get to this neutral zone as soon as the game started. So the fence would get ripped and the hooligans will push the neutrals towards the wall. This wall will collapse eventually, and it would kill 39 people on the act, and it would injure over 600 people. 14 Liverpool fans, or hooligans, I guess I should say, they were found guilty of manslaughter and they were sentenced to 6 years of prison after this. And also, Belgium authorities were found guilty of manslaughter, including the police captain, Johan Matteo, due to bad response to all this chaos. It was tremendous pain and just chaos going on. A lot of people being, literally crushed to death. 39 people died and just 600 that luckily made it alive. But, some of them had long life lasting injuries that happened because of this. The disaster was later described as the darkest hour in the history of UEFA competition. So you can just imagine how bad this event was. Believe it or not, the match was still played, and Juventus will be victorious in a 1-0 game. It actually seemed like both teams that were not aware of the magnitude of what had happened. They thought it was just a scuffle. They thought it was just a small fight between two crazy hooligan parts. One from the Liverpool side, one from the Juventus side. They never imagined that people were literally dying in the stands as they were playing this match. It was crazy. It was crazy to think that the game kind of went on, and after this match, all English clubs would receive a 5-year ban from European competitions, and Liverpool will get 6 years instead. English teams were banned from 1885 to 1990, and Liverpool until 1991. The 80s were a big decade for hooliganism in England and across the world, but like I said, this is another topic that we're going to touch on in another episode. Obviously a dark time in soccer, and I think it's something that we have to touch on because it involves a lot of history and involves a lot of political stuff, and it's one of those things that has to be mentioned because it brought so much bad to this world in a way. So we'll touch on it another time. After the game, Fagan announced his retirement. He said this event that happened, this tragedy that happened, affected him so deeply that he couldn't find himself to continue as a coach, especially, knowing that he played a whole soccer match with literally people dying, feet away from him. It just, struck him so hard that Fagan just could not continue as a coach. So Kenny Dalglish will become his successor. He was a player manager. And actually, Dalglish will do pretty good. He would win 3 more league titles and 2 FA Cups. But unfortunately, another tragedy will occur that will overshadow all this success that Dalglish would have. And this will be known as the Hillsborough disaster. Just to set the scene, April 15, 1989 is the FA Cup semifinal versus Nottingham Forest. 94 people will die that day. The 95th person will die 4 days later. The 96th person will die 4 years later. And the 97th person, Andrew Devine, he would die in 2021, literally 4 years ago, from injuries that he sustained back in 1989. There were 766 injuries that day, and this is known as the deadliest disaster in British sporting history. When I first read this, I've heard about the tragedy in Liverpool history, especially when you hear the "You'll Never Walk Alone," which is a theme, a song that they have accepted as their own to talk about these tragedies, to talk about brotherhood, to talk about the love that they have for each other as Liverpool fans. But when you go into the deeper meaning, whenever the Liverpool fans sing the song in the stadium, after reading about, these 2 disasters, after reading about all the people that unfortunately died, not only in Hazel, most of them being Juventus fans, and then transferring it to Hillsborough disaster, not that long after, only a few years after. 94 people died that day, and then people kept dying even later. As I mentioned, in 2021, the last person that we know of died from injuries from that day. So imagine that, almost 30 years later, people were still suffering from this. And the "You'll Never Walk Alone" song that they sing in the stadium just kind of encapsulates everything, all the emotions, and it brings them together there. So this is what happened. So as we mentioned, Hillsborough Stadium, it's the stadium where Sheffield Wednesday, the team, plays there. And the police decided to open up the gates to apparently let some of the people out. They saw that, there was a lot of people getting crowded in the Liverpool side of the stadium. The police said, you know what, we're gonna open up the gates. We're gonna let some of these people get out, make some room. But it had the opposite effect. Actually, they opened up the gates and more fans went into the stadium. And all this created an avalanche of people just kind of crushing people. And you have to remember that hooliganism and pitch invasions were so bad that this led to clubs to put fences all around the stadium so that people wouldn't go into the field and attack the players and attack the opposing fans and attack, the referees, whoever it may be. So fences were being installed everywhere across England to to kind of hold these people back. But obviously these fences, created types of pens in a way, right? And whenever you had an enormous amount of people go into these pens, they would just be all squished up. So fences obviously led to no outlets for fans in the standing room, only terraces, and bad control from the authorities obviously led to overcrowding, which unfortunately led to all these fatalities. Investigations will keep opening and closing, and finally it would be closed down in June of 2017. So only 8 years ago. After 28 years, they would finally conclude and finally close the investigation once and for all. 6 people were charged with manslaughter by negligence, misconduct in public office, and preventing the course of justice. They would go from trying to blame shift, straight up cover it up, or just, divert responsibilities. Like literally you would have people that work security or, police chiefs or whoever may be that was in charge of all this, movement of people and gates and everything like that. Nobody wanted to take any responsibility of this. Nobody wanted to say, oh, I gave the order to open up the gates, or I let this amount of people in knowing that it was going to get overcrowded. And for years, 28 years from 1989 to 2017, people were just kind of blaming each other or just literally cover up for other people. Finally, in 2017, the people that died got justice. Like I said, all these people were charged and, they are serving sentences and maybe this is not going to bring any of those people back, but, it would just kind of give people some peace of mind that something is being done. And today, there's even a memorial at Spion Kop in South Africa in remembrance of fans that lost their lives to this day. So there's that connection again of love between, the South African and Liverpool fans, and just kind of having that connection between both of them right there. The match will be replayed about a month later at Old Trafford, a better stadium, a bigger stadium, on May 7th of 1989, with Liverpool winning 3-1. So obviously that victory would lead Liverpool to go into the finals. And the final will be no other than the crosstown rivals of Everton. So on May 20th of 1989 in Wembley Stadium, with still having that wound wide open of all the people that have died, with all the emotions, with everything that involves, playing a soccer game, with a tragedy that had just happened. Imagine going into the game knowing that you're playing your cross-town rival, Merseyside derby against Everton in the biggest stage in the world, the Wembley Stadium. Nothing could be compared to this. And here's some audios that I was able to find, and hopefully you guys will be able to get the same emotion that I got.
This is Nicol looking for McMahon. Good through ball. He got away from Ratcliffe. Oh, and John Aldridge in a great position. And Liverpool have scored in their first attack. And John Aldridge, the man who missed a penalty here last season in the cup final, didn't take long to make up for it. Nicol. Oh, there's Rush in there. Rush! Goal! Ian Rush. Liverpool back in front. Whelan. McMahon. Barnes. Rush! Goal! 3-1.
So now we're back in the 90s and the early 2000s. So let's talk about that for a little bit. Dalglish says that the Hillsborough disaster was the reason for his resignation to the position in 1991 as a head coach, and he was replaced by Graeme Souness. Under Souness, Liverpool won the 1992 FA Cup final, but after 2 not-so-good seasons, he was dismissed in 1994. Roy Evans took over and won the 1995 Football League Cup. Gerard Houllier came in as co-manager in the 1998-1999 season, and in November of that year, Evans resigned. So Houllier took over, and in 2001, in his second season, Liverpool won the treble. The FA Cup, the League Cup, and UEFA Cup. And now we're going to get into the miracle of Istanbul. One of the biggest games in the history of soccer. One of the biggest comebacks in the history of soccer. One of the games that will play on in the history and the heart of any Liverpool fan, and honestly probably a lot of people that just love soccer at all. According to ESPN, this victory will be considered one of the greatest comebacks in football history and a defining moment in the history of Liverpool as a club. So imagine that. So let's take you back. Let me paint the picture for you. Hopefully I can do it some justice, but if not, like always, YouTube videos. I mean, this happened in 2004. It's gonna be crazy. It's gonna be crazy. So let's get into it. So Rafael Benitez takes over in the team in the 2004-2005 season. After 20 years of not winning the Champions League, Liverpool will reach the final once again. So the date is May 25th, 2005 in Ataturk Olympic Stadium in Istanbul, Turkey. 69,000 fans in the stands. They are playing the great AC Milan from the 2000s. So if you know anything about soccer, you know that AC Milan in the early 2000s was a powerhouse. A team, a lot of people say the Barcelona of Messi was the greatest team ever, of the Xavi Iniesta that we mentioned in the last episode. But honestly, AC Milan from the early 2000s was probably one of those teams that, nobody wanted to mess with. And AC Milan goes up 3-0 in the first half. Goals by Maldini and a brace from Hernan Crespo. And everybody said, you know what? We're going into the first half. 3-0 AC Milan up. This game is over. It is impossible to turn this game around. As the second half started, Gerrard was called the first goal for Liverpool in the 54th minute. Smicer will drive a rocket to the back of the net 2 minutes after that, in minute 56. And only 4 minutes after, Gerrard will go to the ground inside of the box, and the referee would directly point into the penalty spot, blow his whistle. And now, this was the time for Liverpool, in a span of 8 minutes, to bring a tying goal, to bring the 3-3 back into this game, get back in the game, and just complete the best comeback ever. So Xabi Alonso would step up. Dida, one of the greatest goalkeepers of the history of football. A Brazilian guy that probably, it is as tall as a house, a huge guy and just an intimidating force under the 3 sticks. He actually blocks the penalty, but he gives a rebound, and then Xabi Alonso will go collect the rebound and then put the ball in the back of the net himself. Xabi Alonso will become the savior of the moment. He would become, the emotions of stepping up for a penalty and just the nervousness. Imagine you being a Liverpool fan, get in the moment of the head, right? You are down 3-0. You go 3-2. Now you have a PK. And now Xabi Alonso steps up, and you're excited because, this is going to be the goal. This is going to be the one that gets us leveled. And he kicks and he misses, and your heart drops, and you're like, oh no, this is the end. This is the end. Dida blocked it. This is the end. But then there's a rebound, so your heart comes back to your chest, and then he scores. Imagine the excitement, the love, and everything that happened at that moment if you were a Liverpool fan. So this game goes to extra time. It would come down to penalty kicks, and the goalkeeper, Jerzy Dudek, would block 3 penalties. He would block the first one to Serginho, the second one to none other than Pirlo, and then the 5th PK. Well, you know what? Let's just hear the PK.
Andrei Shevchenko must score. He must score. There will be no second chances if Shankly misses. He saved it! The European Cup is returning to England and to Anfield. Liverpool are champions of Europe again.
This match will famously be known as the Miracle of Invincible, and Liverpool will go on to win their 5th Champions League title. And now we go into the American era, and the turnover of managers would come after that. In the 06-07 season, Americans George Gillette and Tom Hick would buy Liverpool for around 220 million euros, which included the value of the club and its debts. So obviously the club wasn't going in a good direction. In 2007, they reached another Champions League final, once again against Milan, but they would lose 2-1. In 2009-2010, Liverpool finished 7th and failed to qualify for champions. Therefore, Benitez left by mutual consent and was replaced by Fulham coach Roy Hodgson. In 2010, with Liverpool on the verge of bankruptcy, the club was sold to John W. Henry, the owner of Boston Red Sox and Fenway Sports Group. There's the connection right there with the Americans. Bad results led to Hodgson leaving the club, and Kenny Dalglish will be taking over. Remember Kenny Dalglish, the man that was there as a player, and now he's back as a coach. In the 2011-2012 season, Liverpool won their 8th League Cup and reached the FA Cup final, but finished 8th in the league, their worst finish in 18 years. Dalglish was sacked and replaced by Brendan Rodgers, who would finish 2nd behind Man City in the 2013-2014 season, returning to the Champions League, scoring 101 goals, the most goals since the 1895-1896 season when Liverpool scored 106 goals. So it only took almost a little bit over 100 years to kind of beat that record. Or not to even beat it, but to get close to it. And the 2014-2015 season was a disappointing one, finishing 6th, and a poor start to the 15-16 season led to the sacking of Rodgers in October of 2015. But the bad times and the times of, switching managers, of one coming in and one leaving, having a good year, having a bad year, a year good, a year not good, they would end. They would be left behind because a German man will come to Anfield, and that German man will be named Jurgen Klopp. Jurgen Klopp will be a man that self-described himself as, quote, having a 4th division feet and 1st division head. Klopp were retired from Mainz 05 as the record goal scorer for the club with 56 goals in total, including 52 goals. And not long after his retirement, he was named as the manager of the club. The first year at Mainz, he saved them from relegation. His second year as a head coach in the 2001-2002 season, his first full season at Mainz, he finished 4th. The third year, he finished 4th. He was denied promotion on the final day on a goal differential. So imagine how close they were. The fourth season, he led Mainz to a 3rd place finish, which was the 2003-2004 season, to secure promotion to the Bundesliga for the first time in club history. I was doing a little bit of research and I was like, well, that's pretty cool. Mainz 05, right? Mainz 05, I was like, boy, it's a young club. It's a club that was probably founded in 2005. So it makes sense that they had never, played in the Bundesliga. Also, for you guys that don't know, the Bundesliga, it is the top division of the German league, right? So if you're playing soccer in Germany, their league is called the Bundesliga, and you have Bundesliga, which is the number 1, and then Bundesliga 2, which is the number 2. And Mainz had never been to the Bundesliga until 2000, till going into the 2004-2005 league. So so I was thinking, oh, that's not bad, 10 years. But then doing a little bit of research, turns out that Mainz 05 actually means Mainz 1905. They were founded 100 years earlier. So Klopp, in 4 years, did what the club was not able to do in 100 years. Get to the Bundesliga, get to the top of the top, to the best of the best of the German football. On a small budget, Klopp helped Mainz reach the 2005-2006 UEFA Cup, but unfortunately, they were relegated by the end of the season in the 2006-2007 season. Klopp remained with Mainz, but unable to reach promotion the following year. Klopp resigned at the end of the 2007-2008 season. In May of 2008, he was approached by Borussia Dortmund, where he would go on to win 2 Bundesliga titles, 2 DFB Polka titles, and 2 DFL Super Cup titles. And he would reach a Champions League final in the 2013 season, which he would lose to Bayern Munich at Wembley. So not a bad, managerial career for this guy. He went from, coaching Mainz to coaching Borussia, went from, up and promoting a team to getting a team to win titles and, get to a Champions League final. And now he would come to Liverpool. He would take over Liverpool in 2015, in October of 2015 to be more exact. In his first season, he would reach the Football League Cup final and the UEFA Europa League final. Unfortunately, they would lose both, but it's still an accomplishment to reach 2 finals. Back-to-back Champions League finals in 2018 and 2019. The first one, they would actually lose to Real Madrid in a 3-1 matchup. And then in 2019, they would go on to beat Tottenham Hotspurs 2-0 to win the 6th Champions League title for Liverpool. Also in 2018-2019, the club would finish the season in a spectacular run in which they would broke their own points record with 97 points and finished the season with 30 wins, 7 draws, and only 1 loss. They would unfortunately finish second to Manchester City with 98 points. So only 1 point differential right there. Heck of a season, 1 loss, and they still managed to unfortunately kind of miss out on that. They would go on to beat Flamengo from Brazil 1-0 that same year to win their first ever FIFA Club World Cup. This man is doing history there. And the following year, in the 2019-2020 season, Liverpool won their first top flight league title in 30 years. Winning the league with 7 games left, earliest a team has ever won it, club record of 99 points, and a joint record of 32 wins. Amazing season for Liverpool, and not only it was an amazing season, like we said, winning the league with 7 games to be played, a record of 99 points, 32 wins in the season. But, to kind of put the cherry on top, it was the first time in 30 years that they had won the title. So that is insane. In 2021-2022, they won a club domestic double, winning the FA Cup final and the League Cup final. And in January of 2024, Jurgen Klopp will announce that he would leave the club at the end of the season, and he would leave, but he wouldn't leave empty-handed, as he led the team to a League Cup as his final trophy in charge of the Reds. Arne Slot would be the successor of Klopp, and Liverpool will win another Premier League title and equal the record of 20 top flight titles won by a club alongside Manchester United. And this is the story of Liverpool FC, a story that started with people fighting back in the old days about land and rent and, where to play soccer and where to, put themselves at. And, I don't want to pay enough, for this amount, for this piece of land, and going to Scotland, scouting players, bringing them down, paying for their fees, making them professionals, to unfortunate disasters in the 80s due to hooliganism and just bad things of soccer that leave a bad stain in the sport, to, breaking records and, closer to now in the 2020s with Jurgen Klopp and everything that involves that man and his legacy in the club. This has been another episode. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget that every badge tells a story, and here at History Football Club, we have just scratched the surface. If you enjoyed today's journey through football past, follow the show, leave a review, and share it with someone who still believes in the beautiful game. As always, my name is Christian Putalias, and this is History Football Club, where football is history in motion.